Hi, and welcome to Safe Space. I'm your host, the Artistic Psychologist. This podcast aims to end the stigma surrounding mental health, one conversation at a time. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Safe Space. In this episode, we're going to be talking about toxic and abusive relationships. I'm sure these are terms you've heard used often, especially online. People are always talking about a toxic boss, a toxic ex, a toxic partner, toxic friend, whatever the case. These terms have become very popular online. And while I appreciate the conversation that is happening, I think that there's also a lot of misinformation and mislabeling when it comes to these terms. And so I wanted to have a guided conversation with professionals on the matter so that we can define certain terms and demystify certain things so that we're using them in the appropriate manner and not mislabeling anybody or anything. So before we get into the episode, I just wanted to give a few definitions just for clarifications. So, according to Very Well Mind, a toxic relationship is one that makes you feel unsupported, misunderstood, demeaned, or attacked. In toxic relationships, there's usually a lack of respect and a violation of boundaries. Sometimes this behavior occurs without the two people knowing that it's happening. So usually when in a toxic relationship, the people involved in the relationship are not really intentionally doing this. They just trigger each other and then the environment becomes toxic, right? On the other hand, abuse is something that is consistent and tends to be more intentional, right, as compared to toxicity. Some of the key differences between the two, between toxic relationship and abusive relationships are, the first is that according to therapist and intimacy coach Lori Beth Bisbee, when it comes to toxicity, both people in the relationship may not have the skills to support each other, and so they end up triggering the worst qualities of each other. Abuse, on the other hand, requires one person to have control or power over the other person. So for toxicity, both people are just off. But for abuse, one person has power and control and will deliberately and consistently harm the other person. Secondly, in toxic relationships, it tends to be more subjective. This means that whether a relationship is toxic or not depends on someone's personal feelings, tastes, or opinions. So what is toxic for me may not be toxic for you or for somebody else. The third difference is that while one or both partners can show toxic behaviors in the relationship, only one partner can be abusive because it requires an inherent power dynamic. So for someone to abuse you, they need to have some power over you, whether it's financial, sexual, emotional, social, whatever the case. And finally, abusive relationships tend to follow a cycle. That is, tension builds up, an act of abuse happens, the person apologizes or blames you or dismisses whatever it is you feel. There's a period where there's nothing happening, and then the cycle repeats itself. So that's it. Let's get into the episode. I will be having two professionals on, Lucy and Nicoleta, to discuss this topic.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity, Pauline. I'm Nicoleta Mungai. I'm a trained marriage and family therapist coming from a field of psychology. I'm also a mediator. I mediate outside counseling, and I am also a supervisor. I'm a trained supervisor.
Fantastic. Lucy?
I don't think I have so many accolades. My name is Lucy Simiu. Currently, I work as a school psychologist. So I work with children from ages 3 to 18. Fun job. Something about me, I like writing.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to the session.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So I'd like us to speak about toxic and abusive relationships. And I've noticed of late that this is a topic that seems to be quite popular, right? I see it a lot online, people talking about it in the circles that I'm in. And I think that's great, but there's also a lot of misinformation on the topic. And so I wanted us to just have a discussion so that at least maybe we can clarify some things, help people understand certain things, and then we see how that will help people. So before we begin, what are your thoughts? Do you think there's a lot more discussions on toxic and abusive relationships these days? Have you observed that? We can start with you, Lucy.
I think there are lots of discussions, but as you rightfully say, a lot of misinformation, or something happens and someone says, oh, I'm in a toxic relationship, but they really don't know what they're talking about. So I believe there's need for right information just to know what's really happening. But yes, those discussions are there, and I think we tend to use words loosely.
Yes.
So it's important to clarify moving forward. Yeah.
Nicoleta?
Yeah, I will support what Lucy has said. Social media, everyone is talking about abuse, toxic, and it's happening a lot because before there was no social media to read about all this. But we also need to differentiate between toxic and what is an abuse, because you might be in a toxic relationship which is totally different from an abuse.
Okay, so do you think the current conversation is of help, or is it doing more damage than good?
There's no guideline from a professional. Many people are taking the negative. Yeah, because sometimes we need to get the genesis. Where did someone start becoming toxic? Maybe it's from the family of origin. And some people get into a relationship from someone who went through a loss or an abuse when they were growing up. We need to be very clear, because even the person who is the victim or the abuser does not know. Yeah.
Okay. Lucy, do you have anything to add on that?
I think it's a worthwhile conversation. One, like we rightfully said, to let people know what is what. When we talk about toxicity, what does it mean? Abuse, what does that mean? And then also I'm hoping that we can challenge people, because sometimes I'm the toxic person, but I tell people I'm in a toxic relationship. So I'm hoping that this conversation can begin a journey for someone on self-reflection and ask themselves really important questions about who they are in, whatever setting they are in. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Those are magnificent points. I think that's true. Nowadays we see a lot of people online, just something will happen immediately. You're saying someone is toxic, someone is abusive, maybe without really knowing what you're saying. So we are mislabeling people and taking away from an important conversation. So yeah, okay. So is there a difference when we say a relationship is toxic versus saying a relationship is abusive? Yeah, and if so, what is the difference? Any one of you can take that.
Yeah, I can take it.
Okay.
When the relationship is toxic, it can be both of you. You are not in a good space to communicate well. There's miscommunication. There's a lot of harm. It's like you are waiting for the other person to tell you this, that you can do. There is a lot of projecting. And no, it's a win-lose conversation. In a toxic relationship, everyone wants to win, everyone wants to pull you down. It's about my glory. It's not about can we be able to compromise in the relationship. Then when it comes to abusive, one person wants to take power and control. Things will be done my way. You will go when I say. You'll do when I. Now that is abusive, because the person who has been abused, because they have never been in another relationship, they think that is the way. And sometimes people tell you, I thought that is how a marriage is being. People run marriage that way. Because you came in and you're told you'll not go to work. You'll do this. And you became submissive. It can be either way. Even a woman can become abusive to the partner. That's the difference. The first one, toxic, is both of you might be in that space of being toxic around each other. You throw a knife, I throw a stone. The other one becomes submissive. The worst part with abusive, it's when you surrender your strength. The other person feel entitled. Today you say, I want to go this place. They tell you, but yesterday you didn't go. The minute you give out your power, you're done. But people don't know. Because mostly, and I want to give an example, mostly when a woman gets married, there's a word submission. You don't know when you draw the line. You become submissive, you drop friends, you drop everything, and you're left with this man. Then it's become more even social and financial. You are 101 dependent to this person. If we tell you focus this way, you don't know any other life apart from this person. But the other one is about, I'm going to do this. You're seeking for your points. Your flag is up, the other one is up. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Lucy?
Just in addition to that, there's a thin line between toxicity and abuse. But bottom line, in an abusive relationship, there is toxicity. Yeah. In a toxic relationship, there might not necessarily be abuse. And toxicity and abuse can also happen like from parents to child. So it's not just the partner relationships. So it's important for people to be aware that a parent can also be toxic or abusive towards the child. So any relationship, whether it's at the workplace, at home, any relationship can be toxic or abusive.
That's true. That was an important distinction, that in abuse there's toxicity, but in toxicity there's no abuse. Okay. So like you've both summarized, one of the key things about abusive relationships is that abuse tends to be more, intentional and with an intent to control. Yeah, toxicity is more, I'd like to say, subconscious. It's not really something that you're intentionally doing. Maybe you're triggering one another, so it's almost like a competition, like you said. And I think the thing about abuse is that for many people, this is a hard fact to swallow, that someone could be intentionally trying to control you or demean you or whatever it is. And because of that, I think for many people it would be difficult for them to see or identify that, oh yeah, this is not an okay situation, I need to do something about it. So how can one identify, like, this is an abusive relationship, or this is a toxic space and I need to be out of that? Maybe from a relationship perspective, and also when it comes to children with their parents, how are you able to identify that, oh yeah, these parents are abusive to the kids? We can start with Nicoleta and Lucy.
How you can identify it, when you get to, let's talk of a couple. If you're in a toxic relationship, you can only identify if you are withdrawing and the other person is attacking. You withdraw because you have realized the more I engage, the more we don't go anywhere. When you withdraw, they keep coming, or you ask them, would you pass me this? And the response is very negative. You get to know every time I talk, it's like I'm gaslighting this person, and they project back to me. But there need to be an awareness. I'm also a toxic person in this relationship. I need to change me for me to fit in this relationship. Because when you don't change, you keep going through that cycle. It's a reaction cycle. You throw each other that way. About abusive, sometimes it takes time to realize, because you gave in without knowing. It's when you now start realizing, I need to rediscover me again. I need to know when did I lose me into this relationship. This is where your self-esteem need to come back. You need to know, when I say yes, I mean my yes. When I say no, I mean my no. But struggle is, some people feel like, what if I don't have this person tomorrow? You need to be holistic, stable emotionally, stable socially, stable financially, stable in everything, for you to feel like I have the strength also to come out from this abusive relationship.
Okay. How are you able to identify that with kids, for example, that parents are abusive?
Just before I answer that, one of the things that we tend to forget, the abuser, the perpetrator, may also be doing it unconsciously. And And Nicoleta mentioned it earlier, your family of origin, how have you been raised? So if all you've known is abuse, but you didn't know it was abuse, of course, when you move into a family setup, you'll continue with the same characteristics because you believe if I tie my child's hands and whip them, then they'll get stuff done. And that's because this individual was raised in that manner. So they transfer the same thing. So for children in family settings, if it's a physical abuse, of course, you'll notice marks on their bodies. And then even as children, they'll be withdrawn. A child who's usually happy may just withdraw, stop doing stuff that they enjoy doing. And then for them, school or any other setting, an auntie's house may be a place of refuge. So they are happier away from home. That should send a message. Some of the other signs, even at home, you might find a child who'd stopped bedwetting, starting to bedwet. Is that English? To bedwet? Yes, to wet their bed. They start wetting their bed. They go back to that default setting, and it's because of fear. What else? A child may not play as much, may not eat well, or may overeat as a way of finding comfort. So there are all these things. For children, you can easily pick up when you just look at them, you can see that change. But remember, in the home setup, this parent, whether it's the dad or the mom, they may not even be aware that they're abusing the child. They are merely transferring what they think they should be doing to raise this child in a certain manner. So as Nicoleta says, unless there's an awareness, then it becomes difficult.
Yeah. How do you bring that up with a parent, if ever you do? Because I'm imagining when it comes to adults, it's a bit easier. Maybe me as the person in the couple, I can come and tell you, oh, this is happening, then we can talk about it. But for a kid, perhaps you observe, then how do you bring that up with a parent? Because I can imagine maybe they're defensive, maybe it will be received badly.
The good thing, like in school settings, whether public or private, we have child protection and safeguarding policies.
Okay.
So you do need to bring it up. You bring it up, maybe with the parent who's not the abuser, talk about it, and then usually you'll find one parent who says, yeah, I've noticed, but I didn't know how to go about it. And so that gives you an opportunity to refer for counseling. So it's great I've known her to refer this particular parent for counseling. The child also goes into therapy. So that child protection and safeguarding policy is what we adhere to. Yeah, you can never keep quiet with that.
Okay, I've learned something new. That's amazing. Okay then, so for an abusive relationship to happen, there needs to be some power dynamic in the relationship. That's basically that the abuser has some form of power over the other person. What would you say are good examples of these power dynamics, for example?
Money,
okay. That's a good one. Yeah. Any other ones?
I think also intellectual ability. If someone thinks in a different kind of way, they could use that to abuse you, to manipulate and control. Actually, I think abusers are very intelligent.
They are very intelligent.
They just know what to say, how to say it. So for me, that's also intellectual power, emotional power. They're in control. Everything is in place for them. But then maybe it's also perception, because they may not have that power, but we give them the power when you're the victim.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's actually a very good one.
Because how do you explain a partner who's financially stable or stronger in an abusive relationship? There must be something, there must be some dynamics going on there. Sex could also be a form of power. Let me hand it over to her.
Yeah, even sex, because they choose when. It is them who control the space. They also want to sabotage friendship. They'll make sure all your friends know who you are. When you go to them, They'll go and brag, I've bought her a new car, I've done, they have done everything. And when you come to these other people, they'll tell you, and the way so and so is so good. No, you don't know who to share. Because socially they have masked themselves. We are so good, and they'll choose the way they would also want to have that sex, and this is where we normally get a lot of ribs in marriage. Yeah, because he can choose to sleep with you in any way. His money works for him. I'm saying this because you find in the category of marriage, sometimes women go through a lot of abuse. They'll tell you, I didn't know that was a rape. Yeah, it's about even when you're on your menses, they don't care. You're just an object. You need to serve me. Yeah, it's become very, very draining. And sometimes it's also happened to women who are unmarried. Yeah, and because you have a name, you tend not to disclose this. Yeah, and it's very suffocating because they want to coerce you. Yeah, sometimes they will call you names. You the boss, you what, and especially those who are unmarried and they are in big position. You come back home and you feel so small because they have to belittle you to look like nothing. And nothing you can do. Something else which will keep you there is children. Yeah. If you have children, what am I going to do with my children? We have a society where the best family is married. The best life, it is in that marriage. Don't come out. When you come out, if you are a great counselor, people start doubting whether you still have the professionalism with you. Yeah, you are the society labels you differently. Let me be suffocated here because I want to keep a name. Yeah.
Okay. Those are such valid points. The point you said about the perception, that's so important because many times you hear of a relationship where let's say if it's the woman who's learned, financially stable, everything, but then they're being abused by somebody else who maybe is not as financially stable, is not as learned, and people get surprised. But I think it's that, like you said, abusers are very intelligent and they know how to tear you down until eventually they have some sort of power over you, even if on paper you should be the one who has more power. And it can happen to anyone.
And then remember, Pauline, when I meet this person, we are deeply in love.
Exactly.
So when the abuse starts, even toxicity, you're not too sure. You get confused. I remember when I was a child, I watched a movie. I can't remember the name. I've been trying to remember. I should have Googled it. This guy was abusive, but then he brings roses. He takes you out for dinner. So there's a confusing message there. And that's a way of control, and manipulation. So you don't know, but this is the same person.
Yeah.
Or after maybe a physical fight, you've been beaten up. When it comes to the bedroom, perfect. And then the person who's being abused is wondering, what's really going on here? So it's so confusing that even getting out, you really need to unravel those bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as just to walk out.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in this person's mind.
Yeah.
But I must also add, men are also abused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both men and women. I just gave an example of women, but both men and women are abused. And I think that the confusion, it thrives in the confusion, a lot of the confusion. Because also, even with kids, sometimes you'll hear kids tell you when I see mom or dad in public, I get confused. Because I don't know who this person is. They're different. Everybody loves them. They're fantastic. But at home, it's a completely different person. So outside, your friends are telling you oh, but your parent is so amazing. They do all these things for you. But but on this other side, they're completely toxic or abusive. So yeah, that confusion, I think it really helps the relationship thrive. Okay. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add on something Lucy has talked about. When they throw you in that space, we call it honeymoon stage. They take you to a honeymoon because they have realized they have wronged you. And before you settle your mind and start connecting, there's a tension coming because they don't want you to be happy. Then you're wondering, what have I done now? I thought we are back again into this. And that's why even those running women or men, they stick into this relationship because there's a flip, you become the best.
Yes.
Before they settle and enjoy the relationship, a tension comes. Before they wonder, what is this? They throw you into an explosion. Then you go back to the same cycle. And you don't know, when am I going to break this cycle? Because you'll hear someone tell you, when they are not mad at me, he's the best or she's the best. They have done this to me. And at that honeymoon stage, that's the time people who can gift, they can do us. No, you are getting confused. How would I leave this? And no one else can provide. Yeah.
So, usually when it comes to abuse, it's easier to identify physical abuse, because we can see it. Like if someone is hitting you or beating you up, we can see it, right? But there are other forms of abuse that tend to be harder to identify because they're intangible. We can't really see them or maybe see the effects immediately, but they're just as harmful. For example, emotional abuse, which is what I'd like us to speak a little bit more about at the moment. So what is emotional abuse to begin? Anyone?
This is where someone is not empathetic with their own emotions. They don't know how they have, and I normally talk about the childhood. At the age of 4 to 6, if you aren't able to express your emotions, you have been taught. I come from a tribe where young men are told, when mwanaume, you are a man. They had to push their emotion down there. If they cannot feel their emotions, they don't care whether they sabotage with the emotion. Some they are fighting a childhood trauma. They don't know a good space to throw that emotion. What they do, they project, and I use that word a lot. They project to the person of the relationship because you know me, you feel me, you are the one to carry my burden. Now it's become so much emotional, you don't know where this person is picking all this from. And because they have no empathy, they don't care whether you are in pain. They are not able to separate you and the problem. The problem is this cup fell here. But they make you look like you are the problem of this cup. Are you able to separate the two? Now, when they sabotage you that way, then they want to meet you as a person. As a victim, you don't know how to separate the two. You have called me these names, then you want to call me this other one. That's very emotional. It's very draining because you cannot go and tell people this is what this person is doing. And the way you have said outside there, this person stand out to be the best.
To add, Lucy?
I think emotional abuse, in addition to what she said, you see, you're constantly hearing negatives. Constantly. So what that does, it strips you of your self-esteem. It also disorients your self-perception, how you view yourself. So with time, as you go through life and you're in this relationship, you believe you're not good enough, not beautiful enough, not able enough. Generally, you're not enough on any front. And if someone can tear strips of you, strips of your self-esteem, then they're basically controlling you. So I think for me, the emotional abuse can be identified through low self-esteem. When people they hit rock bottom. And then now that means you can't even believe in yourself. And then it starts all these other things, because then you'll be constantly crying, constantly questioning yourself, constantly doubting yourself. Even as a mom, you're doubting, am I able to take care of these children? If my partner says I'm stupid, then I must really be stupid, So self-doubt, think of all the negative emotions that come with that. And of course, emotionally transcends into low self-esteem, transcends into their people now get more anxious, panic attacks. Now you're getting into psychological issues, even into depression, just because of that beginning. Yeah.
That's true. I've even read stories where people say that maybe if it's like their sibling or whatever who's in an abusive relationship, they notice over time they just change. They can't even recognize their sibling anymore, because maybe before they were very like certain of themselves, they were bubbly, confident. Now all of a sudden they're just a shadow of themselves, and they're wondering like, hey, what's going on? They're just like you said, they're very unsure. They become anxious. They're doubting themselves a lot, and I think it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing to see. It's almost like you're dying slowly. Like you're just dying and becoming a shadow of yourself, which is very sad. Do you think there's a rise in emotional abuse these days?
I think it's always been there.
Are we just talking about it more now?
I think it's always been there. When you think about the stories we've had before, just because it wasn't physical doesn't mean there wasn't abuse. In cases where there's abuse in homes, for me, I think it's always been there. It's not a rise, maybe just more awareness, but I think it's always been there, because you always find people who put down others. Now, let me give you an example. Not even in a family setup, in school, where teachers will tell kids, you can't swim, look at you, what not, you're such a pom-pom, you're all those words that stripped away our self-esteem. That was emotional abuse.
No, you've just taken me back. Just the other day I was having a discussion with some of my friends about school, and some teachers were just doing the most. Like, I think they really would hit at your self-esteem. They talk about your body, because we were even talking about that swimming. Like, you want to swim, maybe you're in class 4, 3, and you're being told, your thighs are too big. Why do you have stretch marks? Like, why do you look like that? To the point where there are people who didn't want to swim anymore, because now you're insecure, you're afraid, or you get bad grades, and then you're being told, like, are you stupid? I remember once a teacher told us our grades are not enough to take us from our school, which was on Mayakiwe, to Westlands. Like, it's not enough fare to take you. Can you imagine being told something like that? So it really strips at your self-esteem. I didn't think about it. Teachers as well.
Also, in marriage, you find you get married with that figure, and you get a child, then this person just shame your body and talk very bad about your tummy. You have added weight, and nothing positive they can see. You start doubting, did I really hate to get a child? Is this child, you try like you are fighting. Let me try and find some women who go for gym even before they heal, because it's about this other person's life, and they're emotionally draining you. Nothing they can see positive. This time now they can even decide to have relationships, and now you are doubting, did they do this because there's a lady who asked me, or because I've added weight? And I'm looking at her and I'm like, you're beautiful. And she was like, I wish he can hear me. He can hear you saying I'm beautiful. I can't see my beauty anymore. Like you, the way Lucy's saying, you self-doubt yourself. Am I worth? And you find someone is struggling between the marriage and between the body and between the child. They have to sacrifice. That's why we are also complaining people dressing, because you want to dress to fit what the other person is asking for. And now when you dress that way, why are you dressing this way? You don't know what is good for you.
Would you say, because I think many times when I hear about maybe women being abused, it tends to target like their appearance, and then for men tends to be more of, I guess, their ability to do something, like you can't provide, you can't. Would you say that's true? Why is that the case?
I think we are the definition of beauty of a woman.
Okay.
Or even teenagers when they are growing up, at least Lucy can interact with preteens. Girls start realizing I'm beautiful and defining. And I also serve in a ministry in a church where sometimes you'll find a girl walking and others are looking at her. Like people defines you with how you dress, the beauty. There's a way people want to define beauty, and we need to tell the world the beauty is inside. It's not about what other people are saying. For men, we grew up knowing men need to provide. The more they provide, we think they are better. But you can provide and you're emotional abuser. It's not about that. It's about, is it a win-win relationship where whether I come, I might be very skinny and I'm toxic. Yeah, I might be of any shape. The beauty should not define that figure, and we normally talk about the society, even the media. When an advert is being done, it's about that figure. We have distorted the mind of the society. You have to have this curve to be beautiful. You have to be this. Who said brown is beauty? Even black is beauty. We need to speak life to our girls. Whether you are dark or whether you are tall, whether you are short, you are beautiful. I think it needs to come from the family to the society. We need to redefine beauty, and we need to redefine the strength of a man. Because you might not be having a job as a man, but you are very good to nurture your children. And your wife is working than someone who is working and come back home at 5 in the morning. What is it to do? How is it, Lucy? Yeah, because we can talk about a lot, but you're not present. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Your question is interesting. I think sociologically, for women, the physical attributes mean a lot.
Yes.
And that's why the abuser, if someone touches on your physical attribute, then it hurts.
Yeah.
And so the abuser keeps on ramming that. Yeah. And for men, I think men find identity in work. It's all about ability. It's all about
success.
Yes. Yeah. Even amongst themselves, which I think if it's healthy, that's okay. Because you also want men to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah. So I think that's why your question was interesting. That actually abuse rests on those two aspects for the two genders. So for men, if a man is not working, unfortunately, so they could start a relationship, he's doing quite well, but life happens, COVID happens, or illness, and the partner will just feel like, you're no longer the man I married. Because we marry that success. We marry the potential to succeed. We're not marrying, sorry to say that, you're not marrying, no, you're marrying that part. But you see in your head, Pauline, when you meet this guy,
you can see
he gives you hope that, you know what, we're not going to stay in this bed sitter for the rest of our lives. This man is working, he's putting everything in place for us. It's about family. It's about taking care of us. So when he loses that, I think women, we can be mean sometimes. Now we start pointing out that and really just beating a man down and saying, look, you never do anything. So we even, the perpetrator forgets how much this man was doing before whatever happened. Yeah.
That's true. There's a huge difference I noticed, because for men there tends to be a target on their ability, whatever it is. So even straight to their sexual ability, you start targeting, like, you don't even satisfy me in bed or whatever it is. But for women, even if it's sexual, it focuses more on like the appearance, like your body is not appealing or whatever it is. And it's interesting and sad. I guess both hurt, but the difference is interesting. Okay. So because you've both said that sometimes someone who's toxic or abusive, they don't have the awareness that they're toxic or abusive. Does that excuse the toxicity or the abuse? If someone is not aware, because we could say, like, if someone is aware and they know what they're doing, then that's a bigger problem. If somebody is unaware and they're still being toxic or abusive, does that excuse it in any way? We can start with Lucy.
No, it doesn't excuse. Because even growing up, society has taught you that if you want something, I can't just come and shout at you, Pauline, I want this. As a kid, you've been trained in a certain way, so we should be able to regulate our emotions. Yeah, so there is no excuse. You can't say, oh, I didn't know I was like this. It's our responsibility to continue to grow, to learn, and to ask ourselves, when my partner tells me this, or my son tells me that I keep on shouting at him, then something is wrong. Perhaps I need to interrogate what is really wrong, stop, think about it, and then how can I modify my behavior? So there is no excuse.
What do you think, Nicoleta?
There need to be self-awareness. We need to know who we are. And I normally say that we need also to listen. And the way Lucy has said, children are good tutors. They can tell us when we are shouting, because children will say as it is. Then you need to sit back and get to know, where am I getting this problem? Is it from the house? Is it from work? Is it from clients? So that you don't bring your unresolved issues to your family. We need to just listen to yourself. Sometimes I normally tell myself, can I listen after I've talked to someone? What did I say? What did I hear? Because sometimes people don't know how to listen to themselves. They want to listen to other people. You cannot be able to listen to other people if you don't know how to listen to yourself. So that you get to know, did I mean to say that? How did it affect the person? For them to tell me whatever they told me. Because an abuser don't listen to themselves. They feel like it's about my way or the highway.
And how does one increase their self-awareness? Are there any tips you can give someone?
Self-awareness, sometimes the way she has said she loves reading. You can also do a lot of reading to get to know who am I. I sometimes when I'm interacting with the children, I feel it's easy to ask them, who are you? Some people define themselves with who their parents are, what they do, even youths, and all that, until you ask them, define yourself out of all these other people. You start now people meeting their personality, their fears, their strength, until we get to know who we are, until I define who is Nicoleta. We'll stop copying. There are people who don't live their life. Oh, Lucy has bought this, I need to run and get it. And another person is so calm. It's about, it's her time, not my time. Are we able to be aware of who we are? There's a window, we normally say that the hidden window, where you need to get to know what other people say about me. Because we only bring the ideal of me. But what do other people say about me? Learn from other people. I've challenged myself to ask, Lucy, tell me, what do you see in me? That is the time you tell yourself, hold your breath, because you've been told something. Because you cannot change if you are not aware.
Yeah, that's true. Lucy, do you have anything to add?
Pauline, we're living in an information age. Read, find out, ask questions, grow. I think in society now you have all these communities of interest, parenting groups, single parent groups. There are people who never think of joining, or they just don't want to join. They're living in their own world, in their own space. But because the modern world has changed so much, you need to engage with other people, your peers, so that you learn. If you isolate yourself, then you'll never learn. And honestly, I think there are opportunities. I know in the olden days, there were aunties and uncles, but you see, we've moved away from that. We no longer have the aunties, to come and talk to people, but we have people in society who've created safe spaces where you can talk, where you can ask questions. There's a lot of material online. Instead of just spending time on TikTok, get to read and become more self-aware and ask yourself those difficult questions.
That's true. Read, figure something out. But also, if all else fails, go for therapy. Go for therapy. I think your therapist will help shine light somewhere where maybe you're not seeing something, and hopefully help you become a more aware person. So how in the case where maybe I feel like my partner, my parent, whatever is toxic or abusive, how can someone balance empathy for this person while drawing boundaries with them? Because for some relationships, I think for some it would be easy to just tell someone, you know what, just exit, just leave that relationship, it's not worth it. But for others, it's a bit more difficult, and probably maybe you empathize with them a bit. You're like, maybe they don't know, they grew up like this. So how do you balance that empathy, but at the same time make sure you're drawing the boundaries and protecting yourself? Maybe Nicoleta.
I thought of how they come in therapy and they are not aware, or they know this person is very abusive. Many other times, someone wants to hear your voice as a therapist, for you to point out, I'm hearing this. Have you ever noted this is what you are doing to the other person? So that it does not come from them, then they attack them. Letting them know this is what you are doing and it's not right to the marriage. Sometimes people will tell you, I thought that is the way I should do it. And now you empower the victim not to have a voice. I say that I heard Nicoleta say this. I also felt like you're also doing it again. It's like, they are very much awake. Oh, I have repeated it, I'm very sorry. If they are willing to bring that change back, if they are not willing, they choose not to come for therapy because they want to keep you there in a toxic environment.
See anything to add?
Balancing empathy
and drawing the boundaries with
I think in abusive relationships, you begin to empower your client to leave the harmful environment because they could die. That's the reality. For toxicity, practical strategies like step back, don't engage in back and forth if the person is toxic. Self-care is important. So I tell people, find time, quiet time for yourself. Go for a walk in the park, take a drive and just begin to think about who you are, what Nicoleta mentioned earlier. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What are my dreams? Because when you're in such relationships, even your dreams die. You said you die slowly. So that stepping back, stepping away from the situation, whether in toxicity or abuse, also gives you time to reflect. And then in abusive relationships, what is noticeable is that this person has been separated even from very close friends and family. We empower the client to reconnect with friends, with family. It may be difficult, but it's the beginning of a healing process for them. But where it's dangerous, they just need to leave.
Yeah. As a friend or someone who's in the social circle or support system of these people, because when someone is in an abusive relationship, of course they are pushing people away, and you as a friend, rightfully so, you can just decide, you know what, this friendship, I don't want anything to do with it. How can I as a friend be there for my friend who's in an abusive relationship, or as a sibling or as a parent? How is it that I can be there for them, even if maybe they're trying to push me away?
Or if they've pushed you away.
Just
keep your communication open. Remember their birthdays. Send them a message. Let them know that I'm here. Okay. So even if they blue tick you, it's okay. They have read that, On their birthday, buy even a gift. Let it be delivered to the house. They might get a beating for that. But you as a friend, you can only do so much, but give them the assurance that you're there. And when they call to talk, listen. Just listen. That listening really helps, because then they have a lifeline. You're like their lifeline. When they step out, they know I can go to Pauline. I'm not alone. But when we give up as the people on the outside, then this person even feels like I'm trapped here. There's no one who will understand. So where am I going to? The other thing is, as a friend, just choosing the words to say to this person. Or sometimes people are quick to say, just get out, get out, It's not as easy. So you really need to be careful, even in the course of listening or in the course of talking to this person, to choose your words wisely. Yeah. Difficult, but doable.
Yeah. Nicoleta, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Speak life. Speak life to these people. Let them know that they have someone who accepts them the way they are. Yeah, because some people will tell you, I want to go. The way Lucy has said about picking your words the right way. Some people want you to go and they have their partner with them. Tell them it needs to be gradual. Let them give you a roadmap. When you want to walk out, where are you heading to? Because they will not come to your house. They need to be prepared. And as you continue preparing them, they know, even if I leave, I have a support system. And so will never abandon me. Then whatever they share with you, there need to be a lot of confidentiality. Because sometimes they want to vent out everything. They feel, I have a place where I can empty myself. Whatever you want to do with that information, at this point I don't care. But when we safeguard the information, one day they will come out and say that, were it not for so and so, I will not be who I am today.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful pieces of advice. Thank you. Okay, so are there people who are more likely to be in toxic or abusive relationships? Yes. Lucy, we can start with you. Who are these people?
I think if you've grown up in an environment where there's been abuse, you're most likely to end up in an abusive relationship. And then if you're a person whose self-esteem is really, really low, you meet this person who tells you all the lovely words you need to hear, again, you're most likely to be in an abusive relationship. There are people who, having said that, there are people who've grown up in abusive homes, but you see, in the course of growing up, they've worked out certain things within themselves. So there is no way they're going to allow themselves to be abused. So we go back to the question of self-awareness, which should be something that should start in childhood. So that whatever challenges we face, because life is not a straight path. A child is aware, a teenager is aware, this is who I am, these are my weaknesses, this is what I'm struggling with, how do I overcome this? So I think if we have a self-awareness journey in the process of growing, then we are safe from abuse. But generally, people who've grown up in abusive homes tend to be either the abuser or they find themselves abused. Yeah.
Okay, Nicoleta?
Yeah, I will talk about relationship, and especially the youths, the ladies. You came from a very abusive relationship, but before you correct yourself, you just added to a rebound. And here you vented about this person, how he was. It's like you have given the person the recipe,
Material.
They know this is where.
Yeah.
Mostly those people don't last for long without another abuse, because this person knows where you are weak, and they came in and gave you the version you are looking for from this person who didn't give you whatever you are looking for. And many people tend, and especially I'll talk about girls who are that relationship you wanted it to mature to a marriage, not because time is running, you just get married. This person will throw you to more abusive life than the one you had.
Yeah.
I tell people, you need to correct yourself first. Don't come to, I normally talk about, I give an example of when you walk in a hotel, you're not served food before you get a recipe. Give me menu, give me this. Now, if you don't know how to say, this is what I want, and you only talk negative of that person, you're talking to another person who's a male. They are not special. They will just mask themselves and give you what you're yearning for. Before you settle, now the real person emerge. You know my saying, men don't change. We love with our emotions. That's why we don't realize when they are abusing us.
That's a good one. I think
there's also the bit of when growing up, if a child did not get attention from either of the parents,
Yes.
it may not be abuse, just that there was no connection, there was no attachment. Then you find attachment to someone else. So you might end up with someone who abuses you. So your parents may have been loving and all that, but you never really connected at a certain level. So there isn't a sense of security, inner security within someone. So you find someone who offers you that inner security. As she says, they present themselves like they're going to offer you that. You fall in love with that, the mask. Then of course, 3 weeks, 1 month, 4 months down the road, you realize,
Things fall apart.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. When you talk about growing up in abusive homes, I once read somewhere that sometimes people don't go for what is good or bad for them, they go for what is familiar.
Yeah.
So this is just familiar. You know this, like it's what you're used to. So, but I think to add on that, I really think if someone is empathetic, which is not a problem, but without boundaries, it's very easy for you to be taken advantage of by other people. So sometimes maybe you find someone who's toxic or abusive and you're empathizing with them. Maybe they grew up like this, I don't know what happened to them, their life is a sob story, but then you're not realizing this person is really taking from me. So if you're not able to draw those boundaries, then it's very easy for someone to take advantage of you.
Just to build on that, maybe not so empathetic, but you might find children who've grown up as people pleasers.
People pleasers, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So because you want attention or you want acceptance, someone says this, do this, you do that, do this, do that. So you find yourself in relationships where you're always being shortchanged. And even when you're being abused, you're like, he's asked me to jump high. You ask how high, or to jump, then you say how high, and you jump higher. Because for you, that pleasing this individual means the world to you. Yeah. And I think I've had cases where even working on that bit of pleasing people takes a lot of time.
It does.
Because these are kids who've also grown up to please their parents. They're good children. Yeah. So again, undoing that becomes such a challenge.
Okay. How can someone cope if they're in these kinds of relationships? What practical things can they do, Nicolette?
How can they cope? Number one, they need to accept there's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. When they accept there's a problem, they get to know how can we be able to deal with this problem around us. Because when you don't accept there's a problem, you always find like the other person is the problem. There's this problem, we need to know how to handle it. Are they available to come into a consensus? It's about you. Also, you also need to know how can I bring this change? Because we cannot keep going through this cycle. Maybe age is catching on us. We need to know how can I become this change. Even if they can't realize I'm changing, I need to bring it. There need to be a place where we can also work on how to communicate. Can you start having a soft startup? Not harsh. When someone speaks to you, be soft. You change the tone. Sometimes when we are soft, other people are aware. We are listening. Can we become soft? Can we stop carrying the past to the present? If I want to talk about this, can we work on that? Can we also work on our mindset? Let us not become so much intoxicated with the negative of what was done. Are we able to change and our mindsets change and we start feeling with our own feelings? And what I'm feeling now is not what I was feeling yesterday. Can I deal with what is happening now? Then we start living the moment. Many people are in toxic or abusive relationship because they cannot see the future. They don't live the moment. I'm here to enjoy a cup of tea. Instead of enjoying a cup of tea, what do? You want to pick an issue and just throw it here. you disorient the moment, then you always fight.
Yeah. Lucy, anything to add to that?
I think I would encourage the victims to rediscover themselves. What are those little things you enjoy, whether it's crocheting, writing, going for a walk, singing, dancing, those things that seem mundane but are really important to the individual. I would encourage them to go back there. And then if someone is not financially independent, I think it's important to also challenge them, like to look for something to do. Good thing, even if it's easier said than done. Even if you're being told not to go to work, you can work online. Even if it's reading a report and you get 100 shillings, that 100 shillings is your money. But I'm saying this with all the understanding that there are people in such abusive relationships that they don't even have an M-Pesa account, or they can't even do anything. But if you have like a kitchen garden and you plant tomatoes and you sell to your neighbor and you get 50 shillings, I think that's the beginning. Because then suddenly this individual, especially if it's a woman, feels empowered. Like, oh, I can actually do this. Or if you're journaling, if you create a private account and you're writing, and journaling there, and people are responding and speaking to you, there's a sense of life coming back to you, and that can begin a journey of healing.
Okay. Any last words, ladies? Nicoleta, you can start.
It was a good moment, even to share about relationship, whether toxic or abusive. And it's good to know the difference, because it will help many people. As Lucy talked about childhood. When we have childhood traumas, we really need to know that we can become toxic or abusive for the future. The sons and the daughters we are bringing out today, who are we going to give if we don't prepare them for the future? Sometimes I feel if you are toxic or you are those bullies in the society, we will deliver you to someone else. Who is the problem? There will be a lot of multicultural processes along the way, because a different culture will transfer to this culture, to this other culture. For me, I feel it all starts from the family. If we bring up a very healthy, conducive environment for our children, that is what they are going to transfer for the future. Yeah.
Okay. Lucy?
When we were discussing, I was just thinking this is really a sad and heavy topic.
It is.
And a reality for quite a number of people. But there is hope. There is hope because we have therapists that people can reach out to. There is hope because there's that one person in a family that you can actually reach out to. Like, people are never alone as they think. Even a friend, even a stranger. There are people who write to me, I don't even know them, on social media, like just a message, and they'll be like, you don't know me. They don't even know what I do. But you can see this person just really needed to vent. So there is hope, and no one should ever feel that their life needs to end because of what they're going through. And when I talk of life ending, it's not death, physical death, but what you mentioned earlier, they don't need to die slowly.
Yeah.
There is hope, they can thrive again. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ladies. This has been such a beautiful and enlightening conversation. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everybody listening has learned a lot as well. I'll encourage my listeners to talk. Don't be silent. In silence, stigma thrives. Yeah. If we talk, we're able to demystify things and to get over a lot of things. That's all for this episode. Thank you to everybody for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Safe Space Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube and Spotify. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.